Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So, one day I was with my colleagues, and we were doing our rounds on the trails that day. As trail rangers, we were going through some places, picking up trash and doing maintenance work, and at some point we were scheduled to go to this place called the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens, where we're going to take a little break and have our own little check-in with our lead manager, our lead trail ranger manager. Since it was like we were like I think fifth day into in some sense orientation. Basically getting me and my other colleague who are new, getting acclimated and getting adjusted and things like that. And it's a nice, beautiful spot. I don't recall if I've ever been there before. If I did, it was probably a long time ago. But as far as I'm concerned, it was just like my first time actually encountering this little place here. And it's this nice, beautiful little ecosystem of just like it's like, imagine like seeing pockets of water with aquatic life in each of them, and then there's like paths that takes you along the stretch of like this whole area. Almost I would say is the size of a lake to an extent. Well, just looking at the map, this is a big spot, and I was waiting for my turn to check in with my lead manager, and so I decided to explore just a little bit and not go too far out because I wanted to be within earshot of when it was my turn to talk and just make sure things, how things are going. And so I was exploring, and I happened to come across this little turtle that was just like off to the side of the pond. It was like right where it's like you I guess would be the equivalent of like the shore, although it wasn't sand or anything. It was just like kind of like dirt and grass. And I decided to just like look at it for a moment and just, I looked at it and I was like, oh shoot, there's a turtle here. And then I decided to kind of chill in that little spot where I was and just to observe the scene around me and where I was. And me, I love to observe. I love to just observe things, like observing people, like really paying attention and just because that's how I learn from people by you know by their example and things like that. But when it comes to like nature, it's definitely just something that it's an experience for me to just be present and just to take in my surroundings where I'm at. And when I was looking at this turtle was just like, it was there, it was in its shell, and it was sleeping. It was napping or sleeping, whatever. I don't know if animals either nap or sleep or anything like that. They probably do. So I'll say it was probably napping. And it had me thinking about the big picture of things. Funny enough. uh, and I was just looking at this turtle, and I was just like amazed at at the sense of peace that I felt within myself, you know, and something that I believe that is like the ultimate reality, because it's amazing, for better or for worse, how when life happens and things, and when it comes to the human experience, and when it comes to emotions and a lot of things could, like, experiences could paint a negative light on the reality. And I think when I was observing this turtle and just being out here in the gardens and just observing the peace and quiet, it's just realizing that there really, like, there isn't really no big deals, that there really isn't anything to really worry about, which I know it can be, it's tough for me at times because I know I can struggle with worry a lot about little things. My mind overthinking, you know, it's just working overtime, a feeling of little of insecurity in some sense. But I recognize and I know, in light of all that, that it's like everything's gonna be okay no matter what. You know, to put it in perspective, you know, with the things that we experience, mind you, these are all human experiences. All the stuff that we deal with, the suffering that's out there, it's all human experiences and thus only temporary. When it comes to the universe, all that there is no suffering. You know, I think that people that, when we talk about hell, it's a lot of sense of like, the way I see it, it's not a matter of like, oh, I did something bad, I'm going to hell, or some kind of karma thing, but rather state of consciousness and where I'm at spiritually. And it's something that we all either choose in or choose something better. That applies being both in the physical body, but also in spirit form. And the suffering part is optional. That was the one thing that I learned in my life at some point, is that suffering is optional. It is not required for me to live a fulfilling and purposeful life. And that also includes like this idea of like some kind of great sacrifice I have to do. Like, one of which I know what I think about oftentimes when it comes to like spirituality. Like when I'm just, thinking about that, it's like, oh, I have to forego material things to be spiritual. Not necessarily. In fact, I need to, in the way I see it, living life here, this lifetime, I have to be experienced with people. I have to have experiences with people and work with things, with material things, so that I can have a spiritually fulfilling life. It's it's required and it's necessary. I can't just like, oh, forget about it, because spirituality is all encompassing. It's in everything. The way I see it, it's just not seeing it as like a thing of separation, which I know I kind of fell into a trap earlier, growing up. Simply from the perspective of like, I'm all about God when I go to church, and then outside of it, I'll think about him occasionally, and then it's just like whatever, I'll do other things. And instead shift from that to like seeing how every moment of my day and where I'm at, and just seeing how it's all opportunity for my own spiritual unfoldment, growth. So the things that we experience here are all temporary. We're not gonna take all this stuff, man, the earthbound, all the things that are this earth, this planet, this school, coming back to that, coming back to the turtle, is just, it's all temporary. And that, and I say that whatever stuff that you may be going through that's really challenging and really feels like you're suffering or you're going through a lot, well, at least I want to say, first and foremost, I hear you and I empathize, you know, for sure, and honor that. Or I honor what you're going through in your own unique spiritual path. I only would want for you to be able to, see the bigger picture for your life situation and what's going on, if anything, right? And I forgot where I was gonna go with that. Shoot, but there's always a bigger picture. Things will okay, now I remember what I was. It's there's always a bigger picture, and like I said, whatever you're going through, the storm always will always pass. The storm will always calm. I don't believe into this idea of like eternal suffering. And again, it's only something that we opt in or we perpetuate. But it doesn't it does not have to be like that, and that's not the reality. And so going back to this turtle, it's just just being there and just observing it, falling asleep. It's just like falling asleep, being sleeping. It just helped me to kind of think about that big picture perspective that I think many of us, myself included, need to be reminded of. Because man, let me tell you, like I said, I say this, but with that awareness, and I know I have experiences where I'm like, oh shoot, hey, I remember that sleeping turtle. Relaxing, it's okay, no big deal. I mean, but seriously, I feel like at this point I might be like feel like I'm beating a dead horse here by sharing this, but I mean, it's like perception and just like how we observe things. And I think it's more important to. This is why I think in program what has been shared to me, the concept of beingness is important, and that's something that I've pretty much witnessed with this turtle. It's just like it's just this idea of beingness, and for me, what beingness means is like I'm connected to where I'm at in my environment, while also being simultaneously connected to myself, grounded. There's a sense of detachment. There's this feeling of peace that I have within myself, the sense of relaxation, a feeling of freedom, a feeling of being with, a feeling of being one with, are things that I attribute to beingness, to beingness. That's and that's largely also why when I'm able to, I take the time to just go for walks. I find there's a little strip on in Rock Creek Park, a little path where I go, and it's like a river spot that I go to just again to just practice and beingness. But I think what's important though, that I think it's important that all of us have like a sanctuary, you know, an inner and outer sanctuary. The outer sanctuary, of course, so that I can allow myself to just show up as I am comfortably without any of this pressure, right? To just express myself freely. And that doesn't mean I have to do it around people. I think it's important to just have that for yourself, especially let's say if you live in a household of other people and it's kind of hard for you to just, because sometimes I know for me, like I'm in my own space and I have to express all types of emotions. And that's kind of my way of healing and working with things. I don't necessarily always have to like talk to people, although when I need to, I definitely reach out. But I think it's important to have that place where I can just be myself, definitely be with my guides. And and then of course, I think part of the challenge spiritually, and I think this also can tie in this our level of growth spiritually, is that it's one thing to when it comes to like finding peace, that inner peace, and just to go to some place secluded and just be like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna enjoy this. I want some peace and quiet away from the noise, all this stuff. Like that's great. That's wonderful. Like I said, outer sanctuary, we all need that. But then for our inner sanctuary within, that feeling that has, I think has a lot to do with carrying that peace, that peace that we feel when we're in those physical environments into our environments where it feels stressful, where it feels all types of things. In other words, feeling that sense of peace in the chaos, feeling a sense of peace in the storm, that for me will manifest itself as me dancing in the rain. Yeah, it's raining and it feels unpleasant, but it's not going to stop me from enjoying myself and having a good time. I definitely learned to do that dancing in the rain, but for me, biking in the rain definitely have have learned a little bit about that for sure. And it's just an amazing thing to just be able to witness that, and just to be there. I don't know if you hear this personally, if this is like something that you hear so much, or your first time of hearing this, or people talking about, or something to some extent fresh in your mind. But this beingness and being present is such a very valuable thing. And to be able to be in that state and to work with the emotional stuff, the things that come up, and why I believe that having detachment is important and necessary. When I say detachment, I don't mean like apathy or just like, oh, whatever, but rather it's like being grounded in oneself, while also allowing me to experience the things, even the unpleasant things. Okay, what's going on here? There's a sense of like inner pivot and just like being grounded within that I get when it's like thinking about detached. I'm not caught up, overly involved in the stories that my mind can fabricate, or that will just pop up in my mind about an experience I had or I'm currently having. Because our minds can tell us stories. The ego, our intellectual nature, rather, can fabricate these stories or these interpretations that aren't always necessarily indicative of the case. I know that's why for me, I can get in trouble with myself when I get into this like overthinking and that, and it's not healthy. It definitely it's a sure way ticket to just buying into the stories and things like that into the ego is definitely a one way ticket to to just, I don't want to say one way ticket, but it's just like but definitely it'll take you down a path of just having to endure a lot of unnecessary wear and tear. At times I feel like in life we really need to like do things and embody, do some kind of physical movement embodiment. And this is why I feel like I value so much of that, because man, like I don't know about you, but I know for myself, I'd be thinking a lot. My mind goes to places. I'm thinking about things, working on ideas and stuff like that, like a lot of things going on. And then some, that's why I think that's why for me, hmm, when I play video games, I think that's one of the things of why I enjoy and I appreciate video games, because I mean, at least my mind is focused on something present here to an extent. I'm playing the game, I'm just there, and I'm not caught in my own head about something that perhaps I'm worried about, I'm afraid, or whatever the case may be. But I think for me, I'm just realizing, just to an extent, like why I go to gaming at times, even if it's like a form of escape, or it may I could say, I mean, it's not always the case like that. I don't always use it as an escape, but just recognizing those moments when I do, understanding the underlying need in the escape. And I think this is coming back into the simplicity of just being here, being present, beingness. And then also on top of that too, I'll even add fulfillment and satisfaction. Because let me tell you, I mean, I definitely have moments where I feel like, oh, I can think of X, Y, and Z reasons from like the things I feel like I'm procrastinating on, and how I can allow that to not make me feel fulfilled or feel unfulfilled. But I believe and know and experience that in light of, you could say, the shortcomings in life, perhaps, you know, uh, perhaps in light of the mistakes or whatever, we can still find fulfillment in the present moment right now. And this for me, and that's why I appreciate this about myself, to be able to, like I said, this episode started with me sharing this experience when I was just like observing a turtle, and just look where it's kind of taken as far as conversation here from that. um but I think that's just a very, I, I I think when you can be in that place where you can enjoy the simple things in life, that right there is really a good measure of growth, in my opinion. you know because in this day and age of just technology and stuff like that, social media and all this, I find it super ultra necessary to make sure I carve time out of my day to reconnect with nature, reconnect with myself, and just being away from my phone, away from the computer, and just coming back to just enjoying where I'm at, finding fulfillment and joy and peace because it's right there. You know, the kingdom of heaven is upon us right here, right now, and it's always there 24/7. I firmly believe that to my very core, but I recognize for myself where I lose touch of that. And I know it's not conducive to just be like, shame on you. Why weren't you connected to the kingdom of heaven? Why were you in the blah, blah, blah? But mind you, for myself, trust me, like that pressure on myself, ooh, it can be very nasty sometimes. And this is where I have to practice like forgiveness and patience with myself. And it's like, because it doesn't help myself and it won't help anybody else for that matter if I'm just being so hard on myself. But that's something that I took on growing up. I believe that's part of what I chose to work through in this lifetime, in my life lessons. You know, there's always a bigger picture. And I think the more we take that time to just observe nature, be outside, be connected with ourselves, and do some physical activity that really connects us to the present moment. I know many of us, and I know you have encountered heaven at various points in your life. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been drawn here perhaps to this episode. You wouldn't be where you were right now if you didn't. If it wasn't something that you weren't like deep down inside searching and manifesting. And so for that, I wish you the best in that, in your journey as you're searching and finding and cultivating more of that inner peace. And I think that's at the end of the day, a major thing is just, all this to say is inner peace. I think inner peace is is a I think it's a process. It's something that happens as we progress. It's not necessarily a destination, but it's something that we can tap into. It's a state of being, it's a state of consciousness, it's a feeling that we can tap back into that really is home, which home for all of us is out there in the universe, God, the all, whatever you want to call it, the universe connected to that. And that's something, and to know that your home is within you in the sense that you are home. You are a part of heaven. In some sense, you could say you are heaven. So when I mentioned that coming back to yourself, or like, that's when I mentioned basking, being in the kingdom of heaven, being present, that's coming back to yourself as a soul having a human experience, as a soul having this temporary physical vehicle. And so, my suggestion to you, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in my sharing, is that, what kind of activities do you do, physical activities do you do that helps you connect with yourself in the present moment? And if you don't have any activities, what could you be doing in your spare time? And trust me, we can make spare time. you know, we all can make the time. It just requires little sincerity with ourselves to be able to carve out time. And I think it's important to be able to carve out time to be in nature, to be outside, to just observe, observe wildlife, observing things around you, and just again to be away from technology, take a break from that, detox, to incorporate an important technological detox practice, because that's how we can come back and stay connected with ourselves. And we're going to need that as we're progressing more as a society and human civilization with technology and stuff like that. It's going to be it's a more of a need now than ever before to really connect and be with ourselves. And so, take some time, to do that. I highly recommend it. Again, this is all purely just suggestions. I can't tell you what to do. And even if I had the power to, I would never tell people what to do. If somehow I was never. There's this, because, freedom is a universal reality. It's a universal truth. Freedom. Freedom. So, and I'm just sharing just suggestions so that your freedom works for you. You're embracing it. You're just all to just help better yourself. Everybody deserves the best quality of life and things like that, but I feel like many of us are taught to accept less than. Many of us have been taught to just disconnect ourselves from ourselves, from the kingdom of heaven, the reality, losing touch of our childlike part, our feeling part that's connected to everything, everyone, and it's just dialed in, it's tuned in. So I don't know about you, but I definitely want to be thinking about that turtle and just embodying that peaceful little sleeping turtle, just chilling there in the sun, just basking in the warm sunlight, basking in basking in heaven. That warmth that's right inside. Don't have to take a step further to bask in it. All it could take really is just to look at yourself in the mirror. Heaven. Look yourself straight in the eye, in the soul, into your own soul. Heaven. And I think, and it's a beautiful thing, and I'll say this too. And in your process of doing this, for myself, it's been those moments when I've allowed myself to come back home within, that I really also felt the presence of my guidance as well too. And why I'm a firm believer that we all have spirit guides there with us, backing us and supporting us in our human endeavors, in our human journey. Always. And that's why I always take the time. I do my best to just connect and work with them, gain insights from them, work consciously with them, because that's such a beautiful thing that I appreciate. And if that's something that you're interested in doing more in your search of inner peace and cultivating the kingdom of heaven, being, feeling just feeling that sense of peace and joy, fulfillment, I highly suggest just checking out, the resources in the show notes if you wanna, if you're looking for any guidance. I recommend checking that out always. It's good resources there available to be able to take you those necessary steps in the right direction for yourself. So if if you're wondering that, and again, just that'll be my thing. Just check that out if you want, if you feel called to, if you're curious, and then just connect with nature. Be outside, go for walks, or go for a bike ride, or go run, or whatever kind of physical activity. If you haven't, I highly recommend finding one and just really, because there's so much beauty out there. But I'll say this, that all the beauty that perhaps you've observed in your life, you wouldn't have it within yourself if you didn't recognizing it. So recognizing the beauty outside is a reflection of the beauty within you, the beauty that you are as a soul, is what I'm trying to say. You beautiful thing, you beautiful, beautiful soul. And so I'll leave it there for today's episode. I hope something, inspired you. And from anything I shared here, And I wish you the best in your own personal and spiritual endeavors. And if you made it this far, again, I thank you so much for your precious time and attention. And yeah, this has been another episode of Spiritually Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Zapeta, signing out. And as always, take care, my friend.